They had been flying apart, but they huddled close to Peter now. His careless manner had gone at last. His eyes were sparkling, and a tingle went through them every time they touched his body. They were now over the fearsome island, flying so low that sometimes a tree grazed their feet. Nothing horrid was visible in the air, yet their progress had become slow and labored, exactly as if they were pushing their way through hostile forces. Sometimes they hung in the air until Peter had beaten on it with his fists.
They don't want us to land,
he explained.
Who are they?
Wendy whispered, shuddering. But he could not or would not say. Tinkerbell had been asleep on his shoulder, but now he wakened her and sent her on in front. Sometimes he poised himself in the air, listening intently with his hand to his ear, and again he would stare down with eyes so bright that they seemed to bore 2 holes to earth. Having done these things, he went on again. His courage was almost appalling.
Would you like an adventure now?
He said casually to John.
Or would you like to have your tea first?
Wendy said,
Tea first.
quickly, and Michael pressed her hand in gratitude, but the braver John hesitated.
What kind of adventure?
He asked cautiously.
There's a pirate asleep in the pampas just below us.
Peter told him.
If you like, we'll go down and kill him.
I don't see him.
John said after a long pause.
I do.
Suppose
John said a little huskily.
he were to wake up.
Peter spoke indignantly.
You don't think I would kill him while he was sleeping? I would wake him first and then kill him. That's the way I always do.
I say, do you kill many?
Tons.
John said,
How ripping.
but decided to have tea first. He asked if there were many pirates on the island just now, and Peter said he had never known so many.
Who is captain now?
Hook.
Answered Peter, and his face became very stern as he said that hated word.
James Hook?
Aye.
Then indeed Michael began to cry, and even John could speak in gulps only, for they knew Hook's reputation.
He was Blackbeard's bosun.
John whispered huskily.
He is the worst of them all. He is the only man of whom Barbecue was afraid.
That's him.
Said Peter.
What is he like? Is he big?
He is not so big as he was.
How do you mean?
I cut off a bit of him.
You!
Yes, me.
Said Peter sharply.
I wasn't meaning to be disrespectful,
Oh, all right.
but I say, what bit?
His right hand.
Then he can't fight now.
Oh, can't he just?
Left-hander?
He has an iron hook instead of a right hand, and he claws with it.
Claws?
I say, John.
Said Peter.
Yes.
Say aye, aye, sir.
Aye, aye, sir.
There's one thing
Peter continued.
that every boy who serves under me has to promise, and so must you.
John paled.
It is this. If we meet Hook in open fight, you must leave him to me.
I promise.
John said loyally. For the moment they were feeling less eerie because Tink was flying with them, and in her light they could distinguish each other. Unfortunately, she could not fly so slowly as they, and so she had to go round and round them in a circle in which they moved as in a halo. Wendy quite liked it, until Peter pointed out the drawback.
She tells me,
He said,
that the pirates sighted us before the darkness came and got Long Tom out.
The big gun?
Yes, and of course they must see her light, and if they guess we are near it, they are sure to let fly.
Wendy!
John?
Michael! Tell her to go away at once, Peter!
the 3 cried simultaneously, but he refused.
She thinks we have lost the way,
He replied stiffly.
and she is rather frightened. You don't think I would send her away all by herself when she is frightened?
For a moment the circle of light was broken, and something gave Peter a loving little pinch.
Then tell her
Wendy begged.
to put out her light.
She can't put it out. That is about the only thing fairies can't do. It just goes out of itself when she falls asleep, same as the stars.
Then tell her to sleep at once.
John almost ordered.
She can't sleep except when she's sleeping. It is the only other thing fairies can't do.
Seems to me
Growled John.
that these are the only 2 things worth doing.
Here he got a pinch, but not a loving one,
Only one of us had a pocket.
Peter said.
We could carry her in it.
However, they had set off in such a hurry that there was not a pocket between the 4 of them. He had a happy idea. John's hat. Tink agreed to travel by hat if it was carried in the hand. John carried it, though she had hoped to be carried by Peter. Presently Wendy took the hat because John said it struck against his knee as he flew, and this, as we shall see, led to mischief, for Tinkerbell hated to be under an obligation to Wendy. In the black topper the light was completely hidden, and they flew on in silence. It was the stillest silence they had ever known, broken once by a distant lapping, which Peter explained was the wild beasts drinking at the ford, and again by a rasping sound that might have been the branches of trees rubbing together, but he said it was the redskins sharpening their knives. Even these noises ceased. To Michael, the loneliness was dreadful.
If only something would make a sound,
He cried. As if in answer to his request, the air was rent by the utmost tremendous crash he had ever heard. The pirates had fired Long Tom at them. The roar of it echoed through the mountains, and the echoes seemed to cry savagely, "Where are they? Where are they? Where are they?" Thus sharply did the terrified three learn the difference between an island of make-believe and the same island come true. When at last the heavens were steady again, John and Michael found themselves alone in the darkness. John was treading the air mechanically, and Michael, without knowing how to float, was floating.
"Are you shot?"
John whispered tremulously.
"I haven't tried yet,"
Michael whispered back. We know now that no one had been hit. Peter, however, had been carried by the wind of the shot far out to sea, while Wendy was blown upwards with no companion but Tinker Bell. It would have been well for Wendy if at that moment she had dropped the hat. I don't know whether the idea came suddenly to Tink or whether she had planned it on the way, but she at once popped out of the hat and began to lure Wendy to her destruction. Tink was not all bad, or rather she was all bad just now, but on the other hand, sometimes she was all good. Fairies have to be one thing or the other, because being so small, they unfortunately have room for one feeling at a time. They are, however, allowed to change, only it must be a complete change. At present, she was full of jealousy of Wendy. What she said in her lovely tinkle, Wendy could not, of course, understand, and I believe some of it was bad words. But it sounded kind, and she flew back and forward, plainly meaning, "Follow me and all will be well."
What else could poor Wendy do? She called to Peter and John and Michael and got only mocking echoes in reply. She did not yet know that Tink hated her with the fierce hate of a very woman. And so, bewildered and now staggering in her flight, she followed Tink to her doom.